Okay, go ahead.
All right, today we're going to talk about knives and smallwares. We're going to go over these objectives today. Students, as you, will be able to understand the parts of a chef knife and explain their importance. You will also be able to identify and explain 7 styles of knives and their general purpose. And you will also be able to identify and explain how to use common smallwares with accuracy. That being said, we'll get started with a little bit of knife anatomy. By using my good friend, Alden Brown, we'll see his little explanation of it. I'll wake you up.
Let's say that you came into possession of a big set of top quality kitchen knives like these shunts. Are you happy? You bet you are. Lucky dog. Of course, if you don't know how to match the knife to the food or how to wield your selected blade properly, all that euphoria could dissolve into desperation. Now, since your cutting pleasure is of tantamount importance to the folks at Shun, we offer this short instructional to provide guidance for the novice and veteran alike. Now, let's begin with a little anatomy lesson. All knives, regardless of size, shape, style, or culture or origin, possess the following parts. Begin with the blade. There is the back or spine, there's the point, and of course the edge, which is composed of the tip, which flows into the belly, which segues into the heel, which turns past the return on its way into the bolster, which plunges into the handle as the tang. As for the edge itself, there are many options. It may be smooth, as you see here, or it may be serrated. I'm especially fond of these smooth scallop serrations. They're a lot easier on the food. These should not be confused with a Granton blade. This is a completely different issue. More on that later.
Issue?
So that is Alden Brown, kind of giving us a little introduction to the anatomy of a knife. So with that, I want to do kind of a quick review, see if you guys caught everything. Do a little identification. So, can I get a volunteer for letter A? Brittany. Not Brittany, sorry. Yes.
Yes.
The tip or the point, same thing. Just actually, not quite the same thing. The very tip of it is the point. This is especially important when you're trying to open up containers or things like that. It's used, there's different knives that will have a blunt end there and some other ones that will have a tip. The second one though, I'll roll right into, is the tip, which kind of encompasses more of the actual whole front end of the knife there. Can you volunteer for letter C? Frank.
Spine.
Spine is correct. The spine, which gives the rigidity to the knife, depending on if it's flexible or rigid, is based upon the spine, the thickness of it or what kind of metals that it's made out of. Letter D. Mine. Yes, the edge or blade. Blade, like Alden Brown said, can be either serrated or straight, depending on what kind of food you are cutting. If you're using a hard, crusty bread, you would use a scalloped or serrated edge. Well, if you were to do a brunoise or a small dice of, say, an onion, we'd want to use a straight edge. E, I've actually already showed off, is the cutting edge or the belly of the knife. This is where primarily harder vegetables will be cut with. You could also, depending on what knife it is, if it is a chef knife, you could go with bones very easily. It's meant to be very rigid and do a lot of the hard grunt work of the knife. Can I get a volunteer for letter F?
Bolster.
F is the heel, but very much similar to the bolster. It's the same kind of thing, just another name for it. It's typically where on Western style knives, the blade comes to the end, kind of bulks up, gives it a little bit more rigidity to that knife as well, especially if it's a rigid knife. It's also used as a way to protect your hand from sliding up onto the blade. There are some knives that don't have that, and you have to be very cautious when butchering items. Can I get a volunteer for letter G? Ray.
Grip.
The grip or the handle is letter G. This is typically where you will put your hand. You obviously don't want to grab it from the other side because you can cut yourself. Grips or handles can be made from various different kinds of materials, plastic, wood, or even built right into the blade, as I'll show later on with some of the knives that we have. I get a volunteer for letter H. Lucio.
Well,
Kind of a trickier one.
It could be referring to maybe the tang.
It is. It is referring to the tang, which is the part of the blade that extends into the handle of the knife. Depending on the length of the tang will also give more rigidity to the knife, also more control based on what kind of style the knife is. I get a volunteer for letter I. This one's a little trickier because it wasn't really covered in the video by Alton Brown, but it is considered the butt of the knife. The very end of it, it's typically not used to cut things with, but it's there just so it kind of gives the full anatomy of the knife. And letter J. It is the rivets, and it's what it holds the handle to the tang on the knife. So at this time, I want to bring everybody to the back of the room, and we're going to take a look at the different styles of knives. There are 7 different styles. There are 9 different styles. 8 styles. These knives are the different types of knives. So let's travel back there. So these are the different styles of knives. As you can see on the board, there are boning knives, slicer knives, serrated slicer knives, tournay knives, paring knives, and butchering knives. Have a volunteer or a group of people kind of rearrange the knives just based on their observations of how they should be categorized with no prior knowledge of this.
I would, but I have to be.
Great call.
I have fire knowledge.
Just based on what the shape of them, what you think they kind of do. All right, now can I get one of you guys to explain why you chose to arrange them in this way? Kelly?
Well, so for these, we said that they were used more for boning. These ones are slicing knives. This is chef knives. This one's in the middle because it would be closer to a chef knife, but it has the rivets that make it easier when you're slicing. The food doesn't stick to the knife. This is a paring knife and a tournay knife. They're similar in size, but they do have different uses. Would you call it a cleaver, really?
A cleaver?
Yeah. So bigger knives used to like kind of go through something difficult. And then these 3 are serrated, and then I guess that.
Okay. All right, so if we can go all sit back down now, I'll bring these knives up to the front. We can talk about them a little bit more. Thank you. Alright, so based on these different styles of knives, they were kind of spread out based on their shapes. So first what I want to talk about are the boning knives. And with this, I'd also like you to take some notes based on their shape and what you think they kind of do and what they look like based upon that. I'm going to rearrange this just a little bit from the observation. So the first knife I want to talk about are boning knives, which would be these three here that we have. This would be a very flexible boning knife. It's much used for fish as opposed to meat and poultry, just because it's very easy to get into more finer proteins that are very more fragile. The much more rigid German style boning knife would be used more for meat and poultry. And then this one's a little bit different. It's more of a, not the typical shape as you would see as these ones here, but it's also used for kind of the harder ones. And you can tell that it's because it's more rigid than what a flexible boning knife would be. The next knife is the slicer knife. This is kind of broken down into two different categories, straight blades and serrated blades. An example of a straight bladed serrated knife would be this one here. It's categorized as a long, thin blade that's ideal for cutting large foods such as meat and poultry. The slicer blade may be serrated, as in some of these ones over here, depending on what its use are. What's unique about this one is it has these gratons on the side of it that create little air bubbles on the side of it as you're cutting the meat. So as you're cutting through, the food's going to release away from the blade, making it a smoother slicer cut to it. And the reason why it's thinner blade is because you can make one nice slice all the way through it without having to hack away at it. The serrated knives, which would be different, similar in shape and size, but as you can see, as Alton Brown said earlier, these are the kind of wavy style of serrations. They're not as harsh on the product. So depending on which food item that you would use, if this was like a soft cake that Frank would make, it's easier to cut through that and not tear away at the gluten structure that's on it. Whereas this one is a little bit different. It's got a raised handle, so as you're cutting, you're not rubbing your knuckles up against the table. And this is, with it being a little bit more sharper and not as wavy on here, it's more ideal for crusty breads and other things that can withstand that harder cut through it without damaging the product as much. They also make knives that are smaller, but still very similar. The small slicer knife or tomato knife for some people. This is made specifically more for tomatoes. It's similar to a boning knife, but it is rigid and it's serrated, so it wouldn't work quite as well as a slicer knife, or I mean as a boning knife, as a slicer knife would. This is ideal for soft fruits and other things that are very delicate to cut through. The next knife is the fillet knife, which would be similar to the smaller one here. It's not as common as some of the other knives, as it is mainly used for filleting fish. So it's very similar to the flexible boning knife, which is becoming more popular in modern culture. But this is still a classic knife. It comes in rigid or flexible. This one is somewhat flexible, but is still more rigid towards the back, the spine, or the bolster of it. The Japanese version of the knife would be a single-bladed slicer knife or fillet knife, about the same size, 8 to 9 inches. This has an edge only on one side, so you can get much finer slices and details out of it. The next knives are a little different. They're much smaller, and they're used for paring or tourné. A tourné knife, as it says here, has a curved blade that looks like a bird's beak. It's used to trim potatoes and vegetables into shapes that resemble footballs, or a tourné to some people. What's different about these knives are the grip is completely different. You're not holding it like a pencil or like a sword or anything. You're holding it up in your hand and you're paring, which is cutting towards yourself and shaving small parts off of the vegetable. So it's one of the only kind of knives that's up off of the cutting board and cutting towards yourself. Is what makes these ones unique. It comes in bird's beak or paring or tourne knife, or also straight-sided ones like this one here, which is similar more to a small version of the chef knife in anatomy of it, but again it's used for being up in the air and trimming small parts of the vegetables off. The butcher knife, which I actually do not have, looks like this one here. It's also named, or also called a scimitar because of its shape, based on the Western, Middle Eastern style back in the Middle Ages. This is typically a 6 to 14 inch rigid blade whose tip curves up at a 25-degree angle. And, it's used for butchering large animals and other larger set of items that would typically not be as good for, or not as well broken down by a boning knife. Very similar items to the butcher knife are these other butchering tools, like this cleaver, which is about a 1/4 inch thick on the spine, making it super rigid and gives a lot of weight behind it. So if you're going to crack through bones or dislocate joints from large animals like pigs or lambs, we prefer to use this knife to dislocate those without ruining the edge of something smaller and also not damaging the knife in general. The closest thing I could find to the scimitar knife in length would be this knife here, also used as a butchering tool. It does not curve up at the 25-degree angle that is typical of these knives, but the length of the blade will give you nice long strokes through meat, so you're not tearing away, but making even slices through meat. And there are other miscellaneous knives, as in the Santoku knife here. This is typically a Japanese-style knife. It's smaller and similar to the chef knife. This one also has gratins on it, so it does separate and create those air pockets in knives, or in the product as you're cutting. And we also have a nigiri knife, which is a square. It does not have a point on it, on the tip. It's more used for vegetable prep, and is typically found more in Japanese style or Asian style cooking. As we talked about, the chef knife is the most versatile knife that one can own, and we did talk about the different styles of the knife and why they're important. The reason these have points on these Western style chef knives are to open things or kind of carve away at bones if you don't have a paring knife, or a boning knife, I'm sorry. And the height of the blade is very important, so when you are cutting something, that you can rest your knuckles on it and create perfect knife cuts by rocking the knife on the blade, so you're not hacking or slicing away at it. So now I want to talk into small wares. Sorry. We all take one more minute to stand up and go take a look at the small wares that we have over on the side table there. So while we're doing this, keep in mind that every restaurant has a supply of hand tools, pots, and pans that are used for cooking. These are called small wares. The reason why we learn about small wares is the more efficiently and accurately you can use these, the faster you will get work done. And in a restaurant, time is money, and the less time you spend on something, the more profit you can make out of it. So just, you want to take a second and take a look at the small wares. If you have any kind of questions on them, their names or anything, and just kind of observe and kind of take guesses on what they would be considered for.
Iced teaspoon.
But you're Asian.
You trying to say that
questions on the small wares?
Some people.
This is in the kitchen.
Feel like something a little.
Careful, some of them are sharp. All around.
Or it could be a roller.
Very nice.
What?
All right, if everybody has a good general idea of what the small wares look like, if I got you to come back to the seats.
They need to clean their dishes.
Yeah.
What is a medium wear?
Can you wear it?
You can wear anything, you sure.
Everybody back?
Wear meat.
All right, so I want to talk about hand tools for a second. Most of them are over there, or most of those are hand tools over there. These hand tools are usually made of stainless steel, wood, or plastic, depending on what they are. And these tools are used in everyday preparation. The majority of these tools can be broken down into these specific categories: cutting tools, measuring tools, cooking tools, pastry tools, and mixing tools. Examples of these tools: for cutting tools, we have vegetable peelers, fruit corers, kitchen shears, butter cutters, egg slicers, pizza cutters, zester, melon baller, and bench scraper. So typically these tools are used to cut into a food item or modify it in some way or shape. Measuring tools, as we saw over there, would be considered portion scales, volume measures, measuring spoons and ladles. These tools here are really where the majority of your math in the kitchen is going to come from. Adjusting volumes based on their equivalents between cups, gallons, and quarts. So using math skills is very important in the kitchen, and these are where they come forward. Different cooking tools. You wouldn't expect to see stock pots used as hand tools, but they're not sedimentary or stuck on a table like this slicer is over here. It is something that does move, moves up around, or you can pick it up with your hands. So cooking tools such as stock pots, sauce pans, woks, cast irons, hotel pans, sheet pans, and stainless steel mixing bowls are different kind of cooking tools. I added these stainless steel mixing bowls on there because if you were to make a hollandaise sauce, you would be coagulating the egg yolks in a mixing bowl. Mixing tools are more or less what you would use in combination with these cooking tools. Rubber, straight, or offset spatulas, chef forks, meat tenderizers or meat mallets, strainers, tongs, chinois, colanders, food mills, and whisks. Those tools are generally used to mix items or accompany something else to cook an item. Different pastry tools that are common in the kitchen are rolling pins, pastry bags, pastry tips, pastry brushes, and food molds. All of them are over on the table there. As a culinarian, it's very important to have a general knowledge of both pastry and culinary. Other tools that were a little different over there that might not be in every kitchen are chopsticks, tweezers, pliers, corkscrew, and can openers. Depending on what kind of cooking or cuisine that you're using, you may use all of these or some of these, or possibly none of these. So I want to do one quick activity. I want to split everybody up into two groups. There are two tables back there. If I can get the left side of the room and the right side of the room, to go over and organize the back tables according to these 5 categories: cutting tools, measuring tools, cooking tools, mixing tools, and pastry tools. You can just split them up into 5 different categories and then explain why you put some of those items where they're at. Left side on the first table, the right side on the right table here. If you have any questions, let me know. No, it's 2 separate tables. Anyone have any questions on these tools? Anything they're not sure about? Haven't seen anything before? How you guys doing?
No.
Hand tool.
Now it's a mixing tool.
Questions, guys? Flyers.
The physics angle. This is
That was on the next slide. So why did you put the juicer in with the hand tool? What was your reason behind this?
Yeah.
Okay. You guys have any questions? Hand tool. So that's use it with something, you could mix it with here as well. Similar to mixers. This one was kind of higher. So since you guys are done early, we'll help out the other group. See if they have any questions. We're here to take a little lesson. You're all set? Is there anything anybody doesn't agree with their selections here? Alright. Run your finger. Consider it a cutting tool in general. Classify it as a cutting. Alright, so it looks like we're all set. You want to head back to the chairs? Alright, so what were some of the difficult items that were over there that kind of threw everybody for a little loop?
Whisks.
Whisks. Alright, so we can go back and take a look. In general, I would put the whisks in with the mixing tools, because typically you'd be mixing items with that. It's not, I wouldn't consider it a cooking tool. It's not really a way to cook something. Any other questions on tools? Anything that was a little more difficult? No? So one more thing, I want to ask one more question of you guys. Using the knowledge of the knives and smallwares from this lesson, what would you make with some of the ingredients listed here on the right? What knives and smallwares would you use to make this? If you want to take a minute on your notes to write something down based on those, it doesn't have to be anything crazy, it could be simple. It could be as easy as cheesy potatoes. You use peeler, paring knife, a pot, and a grater for cheese on it. So take a minute or so and jot down a couple ideas. I'm going to go around and ask everybody.
What'd you make?
Breakfast.
You can make a bomb breakfast right there. That's pancakes, eggs, bacon, home fries, cheese.
We'll juice a lemon.
What are you making right now?
I don't know yet.
You could juice it, not some sugar. Like a little lemonade.
Lemonade.
Lemonado.
The beef and chicken stock, which was the pasta.
Here, ask this to my tribe.
My tray.
She's my kind customer. No, it's Sarah.
Yeah.
I told them at 10 minutes. And Kelly.
Micha, what are you ready?
I told you.
So I think of breakfast comes to mind. So I think of eggs, whisking tool. You can make like scrambled eggs. Think of bacon, tongs. You know, use tongs for that. I think of like home fry.
Oh.
Well, thank you guys. I was going to go around the room and explain what you had as there, but it seems like you all have a very good general idea of the tools and knives. Thank you.